Welcome back to my Photograph Iceberg series, a series in which I go over each entry on this iceberg that I found on Reddit. This iceberg meme features famous and well-known photographs throughout history, starting with the most well-known photographs of all time in the top tiers, and becoming more obscure and or grim as we move down beneath the berg. Y'all loved the first video that I made about this iceberg in which I covered tier number 1. It was my most successful video in a while, and I had a lot of fun making it, so here we go again with video number 2, tier 2. For each photograph listed here, I'm going to give a backstory to how and why it was taken, who the photographer was, and when possible I'll also tell you about the camera and specs. I'm coming at this from a photographer's perspective, but we're going to be talking about history, culture, politics, science pretty frequently as well, so even if you're not a photographer, you will still get something out of watching this series. A word of warning before I begin, this tier of the iceberg does contain 3 entries that have been labeled NSFL, so they contain subject matter that viewers may find disturbing. I can't show the photos on YouTube, so I'm just going to be describing them, and we're still in the upper tiers of the iceberg, so chances are you've probably seen some of these photos anyways, but I just wanted to let you know so that you can make an informed decision about whether or not to watch that section. I put these 3 NSFL entries at the end of the video, and I'm going to give you a heads up before I get into talking about them, so you can dip out if you're not interested. And with all of that said, and without further ado, let's jump right in and talk about tier number 2. Okay, just kidding, actually, this one's from tier number 1. I actually missed this on tier number 1 because I had to transcribe the iceberg and I just didn't write this one down. This photo is Tank Man, and this photo was taken in Beijing on June 5th of 1989. It features an unidentified man standing in front of 4 tanks leaving Tiananmen Square after the June 4th massacre. Students had been occupying the square since April 15th, calling for political and economic reforms. These protests had become a focal point for general discontent with the Chinese government, and they had grown to include millions of people in hundreds of cities across China. On May 20th, the state council declared martial law. Troops were mobilized, and confrontations between the army and protesters were violent. In the early morning of June 4th, troops were sent in to clear out this square. It was basically all-out war as the demonstrators attempted to block the troops, and estimates of the death toll range from several hundred to several thousand, with thousands more injured in the attack. This photo was taken the day after this happened, and it's censored in China, as you can imagine. It was taken by American photographer Jeff Widener for the Associated Press, and actually, he had run out of film while this was happening, and he had to ask another photographer to lend him some. The other photographer agreed in exchange for access to Jeff's hotel room, which had a better view of Tiananmen Square. So the 2 photographers worked together to make this photo possible. Kicking off tier number 2, we have the view from the window at Le Gras. The story behind it is so silly, okay? This is considered to be the oldest surviving photograph. It was taken sometime between 1826 and 1827 by French inventor Nicephore Niepce, using a process he invented called heliography. This process involved coating a plate with bitumen and then projecting a picture onto it with a camera obscura. The bitumen hardened in areas that were hit by light, but remained soluble in dimly lit areas and could be washed away by a mixture of lavender oil and petroleum. This process required a very long exposure time, estimated to be around 8 hours, since the sunlight in the image hits both sides of the scene, which was a view from the window at Niepce's estate in Le Gras. Because of course he was super rich and had a private estate. This guy invented photography, right? Like, this is his first photograph, he made it, he invented it. Well, okay, so he showed his work to his friend, who was a botanical illustrator, Francis Bauer, and Bauer said, "Wow, this is an amazing invention, you should totally present this to the Royal Society." So Niepce agrees, he takes his work and presents it to the Royal Society, but is totally unwilling to reveal details about how it was created. Basically, I invented this, isn't it cool? I won't tell you how it's done, I just want you to agree that it's cool. The Royal Society, understandably, was like, well, yeah, it's cool, but if you're not going to tell us how it's done, it's not really like, we can't do much with it, right? So they rejected it based on a rule that prohibited presentations about secret processes, as they should. And then Niepce died. He had a stroke, meaning that it actually had to be reinvented. Yes, photography has been invented twice, technically kind of 3 times, because in 1839 it was simultaneously reinvented by Louis Daguerre and Henry Fox Talbot, who both presented 2 completely different photographic processes. But of course, after these gentlemen present their processes and become lauded as the inventors of photography, Francis Bauer shows up and says, hey, no, my friend actually invented this like 10 years ago, and here's the photography that he made. So, Niepce is credited as the inventor of photography. He just showed up to show everyone how nice his soccer ball was, and then took it home and died. Thank God for Daguerre. Next up, we have Boulevard du Temple. Boulevard du Temple. Daguerre. Louis Daguerre is the photographer who took this image. It was captured in 1838, and it is one of the oldest surviving daguerreotype prints, also considered to be the earliest surviving photograph with a person in it. Although this scene in Paris would have been bustling with people at the time it was taken, the image required a 4 to 5 minute long exposure, meaning that the only two people visible in the scene are a shoe shiner and his client. This image is so old that it actually predates the word photography, which was coined in 1839, the same year that Daguerre shared the details of his groundbreaking photographic process with the public. You mean he shared the details of his photographic process? What a novel concept! The daguerreotype was the first real commercially viable process for making photos, and it really blew Niepce's heliography out of the water. So, what is a daguerreotype plate? Well, a daguerreotype is a copper plate coated in silver and polished to a mirror-like finish. It's then treated with iodine, which reacts with the silver and creates silver iodide, which is a light-sensitive silver halide. The image is then exposed, and it can be developed later by holding it over a pan of vaporized mercury in complete darkness, which does sound like a nightmare that will give you a heart attack. Actually, how did this guy die? Oh. Yep. Okay, next up we have, I think, my favorite photo on the iceberg. This is also the longest entry in today's video, so not all of them are going to be this long. I just have a lot to say about this photo because wow, you'll see why. So this is raising a flag over the Reichstag. This picture was taken during the Battle of Berlin, a few days before the official German surrender in May of 1945. The battle, aka the Fall of Berlin, was one of the last major offensives in the European theater in World War II, as Soviet forces closed in on victory after 6 years of fighting the deadliest conflict in human history. The photograph was taken by photographer Evgeny Kalde, who had a pretty wild life himself. He was shot when he was just 1 year old as a bullet passed through his mother and struck him, but he made it out, he survived. He later made his first camera out of his grandmother's eyeglasses and a cardboard box. So he's got a crazy story, and I might make a video about him at some point because I could go on. But anyways, this photo was staged in a similar way to the installment in the previous tier, raising the flag on Iwo Jima. The flag was not like an officially produced Soviet flag. Apparently there weren't a lot of those left by the end of the war, so this is made out of red tablecloths that were found at the office of his photo agency, and it was sewn together by his uncle, who worked as a tailor. He brought this flag with him all the way from the Soviet Union to the Battle of Berlin, envisioning this photo being taken when the city was ultimately won. And what a photo it is. It shows a Soviet soldier raising the Soviet Union's flag over the Reichstag, which had been the house of the German legislature during the German Empire and Weimar Republic. But there is some deeper symbolism here that goes back to 1933. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to use YouTube censorship words here because there's a bunch of stuff here that YouTube doesn't like to talk about, but you know who I'm talking about. So 4 weeks after the Austrian guy was sworn in as chancellor in 1933, the Reichstag had been set ablaze in an arson attack, and the Legislative Assembly, which met there, had to be moved elsewhere. The Austrian guy's political party blamed the fire on a group of communist agitators, claiming that communists were conspiring against the German government. In order to respond to this threat, they compelled then-President Paul von Hindenburg, yes, that Hindenburg, to essentially declare martial law, suspending civil liberties and giving the Chancellor's party legal basis to imprison anyone considered to be an opponent of the regime. This fire was a really pivotal moment in German history, because it kind of marked the moment when this particular political party obtained powers beyond those that are found in democratic governments. And some people have speculated that the communists weren't involved at all, and that it was actually an inside job by certain members of the German government with the goal of precipitating a crisis that would justify the suspension of civil liberties. I'm sure there's a fascinating deep dive there. It's like a spiritual predecessor to some modern-day American conspiracy theories. But all that to say, right, this image of a communist flag being raised over a destroyed Berlin, on top of the building whose destruction had kicked off a chain of events that ultimately enabled the annihilation of millions, including specifically communists, spiraling into this extreme bloodshed and ultimately culminating in this moment of victory by the Soviet Union. This is a completely full circle moment. It is a rare, complete story in history, starting and ending at this building, from the burning of the Reichstag to the burning of the entire city around it. Man, what a compelling image. Oh my god. There are few images, I think, out there that capture the wheel of history so completely. Man, I'm tearing up just thinking about it. And to think that a photographer planned this, right? Like, cobbled together a flag in war-torn Moscow, brought it to Berlin, staged the whole thing to capture this perfect image. I bow to a true master of the art. Oh my god. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have Mystic Mountain, and I was worried that this was going to be an Ansel Adams shot, but no, it's space. Specifically, it is a region in the Carina Nebula, captured by the Hubble Space Telescope in 2010. This image contains several bright patches of nebulosity, called Herbig-Haro objects, which are produced while stars are forming, releasing jets of ionized gas that interact with surrounding particles. Basically, this is a star birthing ground, and the processes that create stars, evaporation, stellar winds, radiation, combine to create the beautiful features captured here. This view of the nebula demonstrated the capabilities of the new, at the time, Wide Field Camera 3. The Wide Field 3 is a pretty unique piece of equipment. It has a UV channel and an infrared channel, and a field of view that is equivalent to 8.5% of the moon as seen from Earth, which sounds small, right? It doesn't sound very wide. But it is wide. The area captured in this Mystic Mountain image is about 3 light years across. So light, traveling at 186,000 miles per second, would take 3 years to get from one end of this photograph to the other. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty wide field. Now, this camera may have a wide range for creating imagery, but if you're interested in a wide range of creative industries, you're in luck, because today's video is sponsored by Craftsy. Don't you love my ad intros? This one I was particularly proud of. Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative. It's an online community of makers and creators, movers and shakers, where members can find fresh inspiration, advance their skills, and discover new hobbies. Craftsy offers over 2,000 classes for makers of all skill levels, with step-by-step instructions in more than 20 categories, including cooking, sewing, painting, drawing, and many more. The classes are broken down into short, easy-to-follow lessons, so you can take little bites of learning here and there if you like, or do a bunch of learning all at once. All of it on your own time. I've been working on my goal of developing hobbies outside of photography because I need something to do other than take photos and edit photos. So I paint, and I strive for excellence in all things, as you well know. So I've been making my way through this huge class on figure anatomy by Roberto Ozzi, and it has really inspired me to lock in and get my form drawing down. Pair this with Brian Neer's class on mixing paint colors for skin tones, and boom! I'm gonna be better at painting portraits than photographing them pretty soon. Learning new skills layers on your existing skills and improves your art all around. So treat yourself to a Craftsy membership and elevate your creative abilities today. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the video description will get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This offer is valid for new members only, so go and check it out. And a huge thank you to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. Next up, we've got Monolith, the face of Half Dome. Okay, Ansel Adams had to show up on this list sooner or later, right? Here's a shot that he took in 1927 in Yosemite National Park in California. Ansel Adams is quite famous for his photographs of the park. He's got at least a half dozen Hall of Famers that were taken here, but this particular shot was taken from an area called the Diving Board, which took a half-day's hike to get up to. Ansel took many other photos on this hike, which left him with only 2 glass plates left by the time he reached this spot. He waited for 2 hours in this location until the lighting was just right. And then at 2:30 p.m., he took his first exposure with a yellow filter and his second exposure with a deep red filter, which gave the sky a dark, brooding tone. It is a great photo, right? I'm not much of a landscape guy myself, but I can respect the craft. The Wikipedia article for this photo, though, it rubs me the wrong way. I should probably make a video about this at some point. I feel like there's a lot of mythologizing about Ansel Adams, and he's a fantastic photographer, obviously, don't get me wrong, but he was still just a guy, right? And they write about him like he's Jesus. There's just this weird worship of Ansel Adams in particular, and maybe that colors the way that I view his work. Here's a quote from the Wikipedia. Monolith broke through straight photography and introduced visualization as a method in which a photographer knows the way that they want the photo to look and carefully controls aspects of the scene, emulsion, filter, and development process to create their exact envisionment. Bro, do you mean setting up a shot? Is that what you mean by this? Because photographers were setting up shots long before Ansel Adams summited Yosemite. I don't know. Go read the rest of the Wikipedia article if you don't value your time, and let me know what you think. Next up, we have the UC Davis pepper spray incident. A meme. I remember this one. This image was taken in November of 2011 during a protest associated with the Occupy movement at the University of California, Davis. Protesters were seated in the campus quad, and a UC Davis school police officer whipped out a can of pepper spray and torched them all at close range. The officer was subsequently fired, and the university paid $175,000 to various PR firms in order to eradicate references to this incident from Google. Money well spent, honestly, especially since this protest began as a march against tuition hikes. Don't worry, kids, your tuition is being well spent on police brutality and the Streisand effect. This photo was taken by Brian Nguyen, who was a first-year student photojournalist and a photographer for the school newspaper, and he had been on assignment covering the marches since late October. According to Brian, police were shouting and protesters were shouting, and you couldn't really hear much of what was being said until the cop went up to the group and threatened to shoot them. When they didn't move, he took out his pepper spray and made multiple passes spraying them. The photo then became a meme, probably due to the nonchalant posture of the cop, with people photoshopping him into historical images and art, usually inflicting casual brutality on beloved historical changemakers. Next up, we've got Titanic rediscovery. Go look up the term submechanophobia, because this image is like the perfect platonic form of submechanophobia. I actually don't know which of these images this iceberg entry is referring to, but I feel like this is the one that I've seen the most. So these are not actually the first photos of the Titanic that were taken after it was rediscovered, right? We do have photos from the rediscovery, those are here, and these were snapped on the morning of September 1st in 1985. These pictures were taken by the 35mm camera system called Angus, which was Acoustically Navigated Geological Underwater Survey, and it managed to capture these images 12,500 feet below sea level. And you see they're very blue, they're cool, but they're not like artistic. The more famous photos of the Titanic wreck that you're probably familiar with were taken in 1991, 6 years later, by undersea expedition photographer Emery Christoph. And yo, how do I get that job? Undersea expedition photographer. That sounds sick as hell. Maybe I read too much Jules Verne, and maybe it's just like a regular job, but it sounds really cool. So a cool thing about these photos, you'll notice there's a lot of light in them, right? Like they're really well lit. You can't just bring a pair of flash heads down and set them up around the wreck. It's way too far down. So they actually had 2 additional submersibles, each equipped with high-powered bright blue lights, because at that depth, all other colors of light get filtered out, so you can't see anything but blue. Emery had planned this shoot for years, so he knew exactly how to place the lights in the submersibles to get the ideal shot, and he took about 400 photos using a color negative film, shooting at f3.5 and 1/60th of a second. Okay, next up, we have Hubble Deep Field. Ooh, this shot! I printed this one out and put it on the cover of like a bunch of my notebooks as a kid. I adore it. I love this shot. It just gives me a feeling, you know, a big one. This image shows a snippet of the constellation Ursa Major. And by snippet, I mean that the area shown in this photograph is approximately 1/24 millionth of the whole sky. To put that in perspective, think about your whole visual area, right? Everything that you can see looking around. And 100 meters away, there's a tennis ball. And that is how big this image's area is compared to the whole sky around it. And look, it shows around 3,000 objects, and most of them are galaxies. This image was captured by the Hubble Space Telescope in 1995, and it was assembled from 342 separate exposures taken over the course of 10 days. They were like really honing in on this one little tennis ball. Okay, but what if this one area that they picked just happens to be popping off? Surely any random point in space won't have 3,000 galaxies. Well, they did another one in the southern hemisphere called Deep Field South in 1998, and what do you know? Just as many galaxies. Oh my god. Another really cool thing about this is that the galaxies shown in these images are very, very young, because they are so far away that the light emitted by them has taken billions of years to reach Earth. So we are seeing a picture of the universe as it existed at various points throughout the last several billion years. Absolutely wild photography. Like, completely mind-boggling. I can't even describe it, nor should I have to, because you're looking at it too. Now go print it out and put it on the cover of your notebook. Next up, we've got last photo of Princess Diana alive. Dang, dude, I have not seen this photo. I didn't know that this existed. Wow. So on August 31st of 1997, Princess Diana died from injuries sustained during a car accident in a tunnel in Paris. You know, we get a lot of conspiracy theories about the royal family being involved in this, but Let's go with the official story here. As the story goes, the driver of her car lost control of the vehicle while attempting to outrun the paparazzi. They were traveling at 105 kilometers per hour on impact. Immediately after the car crash, a throng of photographers who had been chasing them, apparently on motorcycles, descended onto the scene like vultures. And I just hate this visual, man. Like, paparazzi, they suck. They are the worst photographers. I'm sorry. I played paparazzi before at Paris Fashion Week just to try it. And the behavior of some of the other photographers that were around me was just so hateful and entitled. Like, I thought it would be cool to photograph celebrities, but it was actually just really, really embarrassing to be in the same crowd as some of these lunatics. Like, not for me, man. Anyway, I didn't know that anyone had actually gotten photos of her inside the car before the crash, but these shots were taken by the same paparazzi she was trying to outrun, which ultimately caused the crash and caused her death. So taking this photo kind of indirectly killed Princess Diana. Ugh. I'm not gonna honor the photographer here. Sorry, y'all participating in chasing people to death. Not just her, but her partner and her driver as well. Dark chapter in photography history. Kozarkanka. I'm not pronouncing this right, I'm sure. This title means Woman from Kozara and is a photograph from World War II taken by Yugoslav photographer Zora Skirigin in northern Bosnia, circa 1943 to 1944. It features a smiling woman wearing a Titovka cap with an MP40 slung over her shoulder. This woman was 17-year-old Milija Toromin, a member of the Yugoslav Partisans, which was a communist-led resistance to the Axis powers that occupied Yugoslavia during World War II. They began as guerrilla fighters, but grew in number as the war waged on, and were actually engaging in conventional warfare by 1944. When I first read about the photographer, I thought that he was also a partisan fighter, but it turns out that he was actually a member of a partisan traveling theater troupe during the war, which sounds like such a setting for a novel or like a musical. He was a ballet dancer and artist turned war photographer during this period, and has apparently taken several photographs that became rather famous in socialist Yugoslavia. Next on our list, we have photograph of Marina Ginesta, another beautiful communist 17-year-old with a gun. I put these two together on purpose. This image was taken by Juan Guzman on the roof of the Hotel Colón in Barcelona during the military uprising of January 1936. aka the Battle of Barcelona. Marina was a French-born Spanish communist and a member of the Unified Socialist Youth. She wore a rifle here for the very first time, since she wasn't normally a fighter, but actually she worked as a reporter, translator, and correspondent for Soviet newspapers. This picture was published in a Soviet newspaper and later exploded in popularity, becoming a symbol of anti-fascism in the Spanish Civil War. Crasher Squirrel. This one made the cover of my local newspaper because it was taken in Banff, which is like one province over from where I live. Must have been a slow news day. This shot was taken in 2009 by Melissa Brantz while she and her husband were visiting Banff. Her phone was on a timer, and this little golden-mantled squirrel popped up right as the photo was being taken. I low-key think that this photo either started the photobomb trend or happened right in conjunction with it, but either way, it really quickly became a meme. Photobombing was such a big thing in 2009, it was so funny. Like, there were entire websites dedicated to photobomb photos, just people's photos being interrupted in funny ways. Sometimes not even in funny ways, just like by people in the background. And we loved it. I would sit and scroll through photobomb images for hours. We loved the word photobomb. It was new, it was relatable, and according to the Oxford English Dictionary, the term photobomb was actually just first seen in 2008. So yeah, this photo came at exactly the right time to hit that photobomb craze. And it's an animal photobombing, so it's even funnier. Okay, a few more entries, let's go. Crying Jordan. Okay, if the squirrel one was a meme, then this one is a meme. This shot feels Michael Jordan crying during a speech that he gave during the ceremony that inducted him into the Basketball Hall of Fame. The shot was taken in September of 2009 by Associated Press photographer Stefan Savoia, but it didn't start to gain traction as a meme until like 2015, 2016, when folks started to superimpose it on images of athletes and others who had suffered a misfortune. Alternatively, a meme might apply the impact font to it to describe an unfortunate situation. Michael Jordan acknowledged the meme while giving a eulogy for Kobe Bryant in 2020, after a photographer snapped another picture of him crying, and he said, "Now he's got me. I'll have to look at another crying meme. I told my wife I wasn't going to do this because I didn't want to see that for the next 3 or 4 years." Sorry, Michael Jordan. Luckily, no one made that one into a meme. All right, we have a sort of a dark one here. It's called Burning Wind Turbine. This one is similar in tone, I think, to Falling Man from the previous tier. In October of 2013, a work crew was conducting routine maintenance atop a wind turbine in the Netherlands when a fire broke out, blocking off the stairwell, which was the only escape route. Because the turbine was so tall, the fire department had difficulty accessing the fire in the engine room, leaving 2 young mechanics, aged 19 and 21, completely trapped. This photograph shows the 2 young men sharing an embrace before meeting death, each in their own way. One man jumped, while the other man stayed on top and succumbed to the flames. I can't, for the life of me, find the name of the photographer. I really looked. So without more info, I'm really sorry, I will have to move on. Next, Station Squabble. I only saw it recently for the first time, but it was actually taken in 2020 by Sam Rowley, and it won him the Wildlife Photographer of the Year award. It features 2 mice fighting dramatically over a crumb left on a train station platform in London. And if you'll recall, there probably weren't very many people on the trains in London in 2020, and so probably not very many crumbs being dropped, and I can see why these mice felt the need to fight over this one. Apparently, this was not a spur-of-the-moment shot, though. I assumed that he saw some mice foraging and bent down to snap a picture of them and got lucky when the fight broke out. But no, he actually spent a week overnight in the underground system, laying down on various station platforms with his camera, intending to capture moments like these. So, literally doing wildlife photography in the subway. Insane behavior, fantastic shot. Next up, we have Piss Christ. When I read this one, I was like, what could this possibly be? What photo could this possibly be referring to? Didn't expect it. I'd never seen it before. This photograph was taken in 1987 by American artist and photographer Andres Serrano. It features a figurine of Christ on the crucifix, submerged in a small tank of the artist's pee. This photograph won some awards, but obviously generated controversy because, blasphemy, desecration of the Lord. And literally, I can't tell if the artist is trolling about this. I suspect he must be, because this is what he had to say about it. I had no idea Piss Christ would get the attention it did, since I meant neither blasphemy nor offense by it. I've been a Catholic all my life, and I am a follower of Christ. Oh, okay. I mean, peeing on stuff sends a pretty universally understood message, right? I would think. Apparently not. The photograph was part of a series by Serrano featuring statuettes submerged in various bodily fluids, including milk and blood. Next, we have Child with a Toy Hand Grenade in Central Park. This photo was taken in 1962 by portrait photographer Diane Arbus, and it features the young Colin Wood holding a replica MK2 pineapple grenade. It's one of a series of images in which Arbus was trying to get the right angle of the boy, and eventually he gave her this face and posture. Arbus's images are all about expressiveness, and I guess this image was the most expressive of the bunch. I'm not 100% sure I understand why this particular image became famous. I suppose it is an interesting portrait of how the war infiltrated the subconscious of America's youth in subsequent generations, right? The boy, as an adult, has speculated that he was imitating the face he had seen on a soldier in a war movie. He's got the grenade, so you got this weird contrast between childhood playfulness and the brutal legacy of the Second World War. We actually have a quote from the kid after he had grown up from an interview in the Washington Post where he says, "She catches me in a moment of exasperation. It's true, I was exasperated. My parents had divorced and there was a general feeling of loneliness, a sense of being abandoned. I was just exploding. She saw that and it's like commiseration. She captured the loneliness of everyone. It's all people who want to connect but don't know how to connect." Next we have The Day the Earth Smiled. This looks like a rendering, first of all. I didn't know this was a photograph. This is a composite photograph taken by the spacecraft Cassini on July 19th of 2013. It features a solar eclipse by Saturn, but the Earth is reprising its role as a pale blue dot in this image, featured way over here. This little dot in the corner. There was actually a campaign that accompanied this image, encouraging people to look up at the sky and smile at the moment that this photo was being taken. On July 19th, events were coordinated internationally by NASA and the Astronomers Without Borders, including a Wave at Saturn event and a Message to the Milky Way contest, which allowed folks to submit digital photos and musical compositions made on that day, and the winning entries would be beamed up as a message for potential extraterrestrials. Basically, it was a fun excuse to think about and celebrate the wonders of the cosmos. Although this image was captured on the 19th of July, it took approximately 2 months to process it. The composite is made of 141 images, although 323 were taken on the day, and the final image was released on November 12th of 2013 and landed on the front page of the New York Times. Okay, another space photo. Love the space photos. First photo of a black hole. I remember when this photo came out, and it was so hyped up. I was at work and everyone was talking about it. Have you seen the photo? Have you seen the photo? And as soon as I clocked out, I Googled the photo and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, okay. My expectations were too high. It is an incredible feat that this photo was captured. It is not an incredible photo. Okay, like, it is an incredible photo, but I mean, you see it, right? This image was captured using the Event Horizon Telescope, and it features a black hole at the center of galaxy M87. It was published in April of 2019, but actually took quite some time to capture because the Event Horizon Telescope is actually a telescopic array, so sci-fi, made up of a global network of radio telescopes. The project combines data from several stations around the world to create these composite images, but this is more like a visual representation of accumulated data than an actual photograph. Like, I was trying to understand how they captured it, and it's data. Just leave it at that. It's a lot of really complicated data. But this dispersed network of telescopes, of data collection sites, means that you actually have to retrieve the data from all of those different places around the world and assemble them in one place in order to actually make an image. The array has also photographed the black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and the processing of that photograph was delayed because there are no flights out of the South Pole in winter from April to October, so the full data set, some of which was in the South Pole, could not be assembled until somebody could actually fly it out. I actually kind of love this. I love thinking about all of the scientists in countries around the world who had to work together to make these images possible. Like, the world is at war with everybody and things are terrible, but you still have people working together across borders to advance our understanding of the universe. That's kind of nice, right? That's nice. Okay, moving on. So, the last 3 installments here on the tier are the ones that I mentioned before. They are all marked not safe for life. So I won't be able to show them. You're not going to see pictures, but you should go and look them up because it's good for your education. And honestly, I don't think they're that brutal except for the first one. I'm going to do my best to describe them so you know what you're getting into. And if you're not interested in hearing descriptions, then just tap out now. So, first up on the NSFL list, we have Thich Quang Duc Self-immolation. I'm not going to do very well with the pronunciation in this section, I'm very sorry. This image features a Vietnamese Mahayana Buddhist monk seated in the lotus position and completely engulfed in flames in the middle of a busy intersection in Saigon. Beside him lies a jerry can of gasoline, which was used as an accelerant to set himself on fire. Captured in June of 1963, this monk was protesting the persecution of Buddhists by the South Vietnamese government, which was led at the time by a staunch Catholic. By all eyewitness accounts, he sat completely still and quiet throughout the ordeal, which is super metal, like so metal, probably the most metal thing you could do. Don't do it, but it would be metal. Photographs of his self-immolation were published around the world, drawing attention to the anti-Buddhist policies of the Vietnamese government. And after a series of raids on Buddhist pagodas across South Vietnam and several more self-immolations by Buddhist monks, a CIA-backed coup by the Army of the Republic of Vietnam toppled the regime and assassinated the sitting president in November of 1963. This photograph was taken by Associated Press photographer Malcolm Brown and later won the World Press Photo of the Year award. Go off, Malcolm Brown, I'm glad you won the award, but Thich Quang Duc did most of the heavy lifting in this one, I think. Next, we have Napalm Girl, which a lot of you thought should have been in Tier 1. Got a lot of comments about that on my Tier 1 video. This shot doesn't feature gore, but it is very disturbing. It shows 5 children of various ages running in terror towards the camera, with several uniformed soldiers behind them, and they are all fleeing a black cloud looming on the horizon. The young girl in the middle of the frame is completely naked and crying out in terror. The photo was taken in June of 1972 after a South Vietnamese napalm strike mistakenly hit a village rather than a troop of North Vietnamese soldiers nearby. The pilot who initiated the strike mistook this fleeing group of civilians and South Vietnamese soldiers for the North Vietnamese troops, burning them with napalm. The girl in the image, who was 9-year-old Phan Ting King Phuc, had torn off her burning clothes while fleeing the strike. Now the photo, there is some controversy as to who actually took it. It was allegedly taken by photojournalist Nick Ute, but investigations and conflicting reports have cast doubt on this, with some speculating that one of 2 other people in his party could have actually taken the photo. There's like a whole documentary about it. I haven't watched it, I probably will. But for now, I don't want to say much about whether or not that's true. Finally, the final installation in this iceberg, we have the Kent State Massacre. This photo is emotional, but it's not gory. I still can't show it on YouTube, I don't think, but it is the least visually disturbing of these NSFL shots, I think. This image shows a young woman, Marianne Vecchio, crying out in anguish over the body of 20-year-old Jeffrey Miller as he lies face down on a pathway. It was captured minutes after the unarmed student was shot down by Ohio National Guardsmen. And we have a bit of a theme in this tier, don't we, of student protests being brutalized by state violence. This photo was captured on May 4th of 1970, when 4 students were killed by the National Guard and 9 others were wounded in what came to be known as the Kent State Massacre. What happened? Around 2,000 students had gathered to protest the expansion of the Cambodian campaign during the Vietnam War, which had become extremely unpopular by that time. Nixon had been elected in 1968 and promised to end the war, but in April of 1970, the US took part in an invasion of Cambodia, claiming that this was an attempt to defeat North Vietnamese troops based there. This was an expansion of a grossly unpopular and ultimately unwinnable war. Mind you, students were getting drafted into this war, sent to go and fight overseas. It was such a bizarre chapter in US history, like, not an outlier, but still just bafflingly poor policy. Students were getting drafted and obviously had pretty valid reasons to be protesting in the streets. On this occasion, 96 National Guard troops were ordered to advance on the crowd of student protesters. They did so with their weapons drawn, and at some point, one of them, Miriam Pryor, decided to start firing into the crowd of students, and I guess this gave the rest of the guardsmen permission to do the same. 29 of the guardsmen wound up firing their weapons at student protesters. This photo was taken by John Paul Philo and won him the Pulitzer Prize in 1971. At the time, he was a photojournalism student at Kent State University and a staffer on the local newspaper. The image was taken with a Nikkor Mat camera with Tri-X film, and apparently most of the photos he took on that day were shot at f8, 1/500th of a second. And that wraps up tier number 2. I have been talking for like an hour and 45 minutes. Oh my god, my voice is so sore. Thank you all for watching. I hope that it was interesting. I definitely found it interesting. I had a lot of fun researching this. I want to give another huge thank you to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. I will be back next week with a new video. I'm not going to be doing tier 3 yet. I'm going to take a pause on this series because I'm going to be reviewing an exciting new product that I can't talk about yet, but I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you all, so stay tuned for that. Remember to subscribe to my channel to keep up to date on this series and with the many other fantastic videos that I produce. Leave a like if you liked it, and leave a comment down below letting me know if you noticed any photos that are conspicuously missing from tier number 2. What should have been included here that was not. I think I'll get another Iceberg tier video out by the beginning of August, like the first week of August, so stay tuned for that. I will see you all soon, and in the meantime, I want you all to stay sharp, and don't forget to keep taking pictures. Bye guys.